The Devil's Chord is the third, or kind of the fourth, Russell T Davies episode for Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor. Music, Maestro, Gods, Murray Gold, on screen. What an episode. Talking about it, myself, Neo from Australia, Ingiga from England, Missy from New Zealand. What do we think of this one?
It is a huge shift for RTD. It doesn't feel like anything, quite like anything I've watched from him before. Because it plays out the most explicitly like a cartoon. And in a lot of ways you could say it's not a particularly good story in terms of like its content, its themes, its structure, its characters, but cartoons exist for a reason. They're fun, right? And I think the experience of watching this for, 50 minutes has a lot of fun aspects to it. It feels like a shot of something. I'm not sure what, but I did enjoy it. And I did say I came out of it like happier maybe than I did than Space Babies a little bit.
I felt a similar way. It wasn't the exact words I used, but I also felt similarly that like it wasn't a very good story or anything like that, but there was something to it. On my first viewing, I was dismayed because it was the second in a row where I was like, this story isn't working. I'm not enjoying the fact that these stories aren't working. So I was kind of down after my very first viewing of it, but on subsequent viewings, I've grown to appreciate the things that it is doing more than the things it's not doing. And so I think, I agree. I definitely like this more than Space Babies, yeah.
But I would say I wanted an actual musical episode, and this was not that.
Well, me too. I was so disappointed.
Yeah, it's very strange to get like a guest star who, sings in actual musicals and not really have them sing like at all. They didn't get an actual musical number. Very strange decision.
I think this episode would be improved by taking one of the songs out, in fact.
Which is the worst thing you want from a musical-ish episode.
But let's start more positive. Maestro, I loved. I only have good things to say. What a cool villain. Just absolute joy to watch. The idea of them is cool. Like the actual concept of the villain is cool. The performance is just nuts in all the best ways. The way they bounce off the other act. It's just, I loved every second that Maestro was on screen. Just absolutely awesome. Awesome.
Totally agree.
Yeah, 100%. I think the key between, I think the difference between a performance like Jinx Monsoon's here and maybe some guest star who's just doing crap camp, whatever, is that Jinx is very attentive and very detailed. I mean, like, pretty much every split second that Jinx is on screen, right, she's doing something like with her face, right? She's doing like this or that. Like, she is putting a huge amount of thought and energy and like detail into that performance. Like, her face is constantly like morphing. And Maestro there, like their physicality, their like expressions, everything is just very, very considered. So it's a real performance. It's not an actor having a lark, taking the piss because it's Docky Who. No, this is someone even though they are doing a huge and ridiculous performance in a lot of ways, they are taking it very seriously.
Yeah, it's not just like random, like hamming it up. It's like very, very specific, very measured, very considered, hamming it up. And God, it works so well.
You know, it doesn't work so well. I'm going to say lots of positive things about the episode, but just thinking about the beginning, because it's such a cool idea to set up Maestro. We're doing more of the interesting fourth wall breaking that this era is doing. Maestro looks to the camera and Maestro starts playing the Doctor Who theme, and then we go into the titles. How could you screw that up? It all sounds like it's going to be great, right? But how did that work? Were you guys bothered by it as much as I was?
I hated it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was disappointing. See, when it started, I thought we were going to get a new version of the theme, like a cover of the theme done in some cool way. I mean, didn't Gold suggest we might have more than one version of the theme ages ago? So I thought we were going to get that, but then we just get like practically a jump cut into the regular old crap theme. It's like, what the hell? That was so lame. How did that get signed off on?
The theme of the intro was already so bad in RTD2. It's already so out of sync and it's too short and everything just feels awkward, the cuts and everything. And so it sets up so well.
And it's gotten worse now. It's gotten worse with season 1 because now they loop a bit of it to like, it just sounds so bad what is happening.
It's such a good idea that it just hurts. It's such a cool idea. And it starts cool. And yeah. Remember when Capaldi had the guitar and it was a regular theme in Before the Flood or Under the Lake, whichever one it was. But we had the layer throughout the whole thing. Why couldn't we just have the piano going through the whole track?
Yeah, I think it's indicative of a lot of my feelings towards this episode. It was just like, it's such a cool idea. How did you mess it up?
Positive thing. We can all say, well, I hope we agree. Church, Ruby Road, direction was, we talked a lot about that in our discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Space Babies was whatever. This felt like it was directed in a cool way. This episode to me.
Yeah.
Like we open after the titles with that long tracking shot of like dancing through the TARDIS and the camera's doing interesting movements, and it's really kind of it's clicking in so well with how the character's feeling at the moment. And there's just so many things, interesting ways to frame stuff and interesting shots, and just I felt like the direction was really adding to the episode, basically, in this. So I enjoyed how this was directed. What did you guys think?
I might go further and say the direction is carrying this episode a lot. I think the sense of visual fun in the episode is a huge part of what makes it work. I think a lesser director handed this script in this episode would create something fucking unwatchable, almost. I think so. Moments like, say, when Maestro does something and affects reality some way. So we get the spoon falling in slow-mo and we see Maestro's face distorted and all these reflections. Just, there is so much visual pleasure from distorting reality like that and having these moments of sound design and visual strangeness and uncanny that kicks in. I mean, it's just so exciting just to witness something like that. Even though nothing is happening, nothing like narratively interesting is happening. Just the experience of stuff like that is so cool. Just something small like the Doctor creating a bubble of silence, and suddenly we just have this really quiet, just like hum, and then all these like silent moments happening, and just all of that happening, and also just the propulsive way the camera follows things around and chases Maestro around, and just everything is just so much fun like to watch, and that is a really, really important aspect of this episode.
Yeah, this is the first time in a very, very. I'm trying to think if there was something in the 60th. I don't remember, but this is the first time in a genuinely really long time that there has been like visuals of Doctor Who that I've been really interested in and really like they've stuck in my head for positive reasons, and this episode's full of them. I didn't think about what would happen in the hands of a lesser director, but you're right. This is having a good director on this was so necessary, and yeah, there are just so many good shots. Obviously, I'm thinking of the shots over London as Ruby plays the piano on the rooftop is lovely stuff, and everything with Maestro was good, and obviously the silent bit in the middle. The
tuning fork in the puddle, I love that bit, just the beauty of the droplets, so cool.
Oh, so good. When we're in future, alternate, present, dead London, and then it transforms into like this dark black void.
That was fun, yeah.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff, lots of really fun stuff.
The sonic silence sequence, that's fun, that you just mentioned, and to a much bigger degree, the Ruby Waltz sequence. I love those so much. I think they're doing the exact thing I was complaining about Space Babies not doing. They're breathing. There's so much room. Like the tension is really cool in the sonic silence sequence, and it gets milked, and that's awesome. We get to enjoy the tension of it. The Ruby Waltz thing, it's the best thing this season has done so far to my eyes and ears. It goes for so long in such a cool way. We're enjoying it just as the characters, opening their windows up are enjoying it. It's just Murray Gold has done an absolutely beautiful piece of music. The episode's, concept of the music is gone from the world. It's everything's playing together so well, and the episode lets itself get everything it can from that, and it's brilliant, and we get so much from that. What a fantastic sequence.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about during Ruby Road, like how much it would be so cool if Ruby got to play like her theme. Yeah. I mean, we had some debate about who should play the theme, but I think Ruby playing her own theme and explaining that actually she wrote it for someone else, interestingly, it kind of like puts it all together and makes that work, and that was lovely. It's a really lovely bit of payoff from that. I mean, it's so cool to have a musician companion and to have her like play a theme in a way that actually makes sense of the episode, actually matters. So that's a really cool thing to write an episode around, even if like the edges of that story maybe don't make a huge amount of sense. That was a very, very nice sequence.
That's very positive. This is very nitpicky. I'm just going to get it out of the way. The whole lost chord thing, I don't really understand. So the tritone, that's cool. Like that's always a cool thing. So that makes sense to me. The lost, I'm just very confused of what we're doing there. So at the end when 15 is trying to find the right chord, why does he play that note? Why does he do an accidental? Why does he go for that key? I just don't understand. It's like he is like he missed the key he was aiming for. Like, I don't understand why he played that note, which sounded bad. And then I don't understand Lennon-McCartney. The idea is like the strength. It's not the Doctor and Ruby has to save the day. Lennon-McCartney can do it just by playing like a major chord. It's for an episode about music. I was really confused by how it treated music in the narrative. Basically, I felt it was a very wishy-washy. I was confused here. I don't know if listeners will agree or you guys will agree, but I was very dissatisfied with the kind of plot device of what they were doing with the chord and the tritone and whatnot. I was very confused. And then the music duel bit, the bit where 15 and Ruby face away from the piano, there's I don't know. I feel like I'm just being an annoying little nerd with these things, but they pulled me out of the episode, those aspects.
Well, in that case, I was also an annoying little nerd because they really annoyed me too. And it's sort of, the reason it annoyed me is because it's the climax of the episode. It's like, this should make more sense than it does. It's almost there, but it's like, and the rest of the episode is almost good enough to make up for it, but it isn't. And so the music battle, it's sort of like these things happen because it's the kind of thing that you would expect to happen in this kind of story, rather than because there's logic underpinning them. Like having a music battle, like a duel on the violin and the piano, it's like, because that's a cool idea. It doesn't actually like map onto anything that's happening in the plot, because like the Doctor's trying to find one chord. Like, why are they having a duel? Yeah,
how does that relate to musical genius? Like, if we on a piano, there's only so many notes. So like, what is Timothy Drake just banging around different notes? Like, if it was through a melody or something, maybe, but I just find the idea of a lost chord very strange.
Yeah, especially since like earlier when like before they go into the big band room and they're in the recording studio, the Doctor says like sometimes genius is just hard work, and he sits down and he's like, oh, he's just gonna play every chord until he gets the right one.
Yeah.
So that like even the duel like makes even less sense. Another very extraordinarily nitpicky thing is when the two Beatles come down the hallway and they look up at the notes glowing above the piano. There's no stave or anything. It's just like
yeah. How are they relating? Yeah,
it's the giggle stuff again, where like Donna just drew those random lines on the piece of paper. It's like it's notes. It's notes again. It's notes. It's music notes. It's like musical techno babble. Yeah.
There's a lot of more positive stuff I want to say, and Gig wants to say, and you want to say. But there's a big thing. Let's just get it out of the way now. I don't think the episode works, because I think the episode's actually quite a bad idea. I think the idea is really broken and bad behind the episode. What the idea is, let's do a Beatles episode of Doctor Who, and then the revision of that idea is we can't afford Beatles music, and so then the evolution of that is let's do an episode about how we can't use Beatles music. That's a fucking bad idea. That what? That's not a good idea. How is that a good idea? You know why people like the Beatles? It's not the haircuts, it's the music. The music is why people like the Beatles. So if you're putting the Beatles in something, what people want out of that isn't like actors that don't look heaps like them. What they want out of that is Beatles music. But it's not really a Beatles episode. Yes, it is. It was marketed that way. I've read Radio Times. I've read Doctor Who magazine. I've read the interviews. It is a Beatles episode. You can't gaslight me. Everyone's going to try and do this now, I swear. People are going to try and say, it's not a Beatles, it's an episode about the 60s, an episode about Maestro, it's an episode about... Everyone's going to do that. No, it's not. It's not that. It's a Beatles episode. This is RTD. He's a showman. This is how the episode was advertised. You guys back me up here, right? It was a Beatles episode. That's how it's been advertised everywhere.
Yes, it was a Beatles episode.
It's a Beatles episode without Beatles music. That's just blueballing the audience, the whole thing. It doesn't end... We'll get into the pros and cons of the song at the end later on, but that's not a Beatles song. It's not even trying to sound like a Beatles song. So I think the episode is completely broken because it's advertised on the basis of you have the Beatles, and then there's no Beatles music in it. Then the catharsis of the episode is a song that doesn't sound like the Beatles and has nothing really to do with the Beatles. And I don't think any of this actually works.
What's really quite annoying is that it's an episode. There's a separate like other good idea with Maestro.
Yeah,
and it makes you wonder. It's like, what could this just have not been a Beatles episode? Just do the Maestro thing instead.
If the episode is predicated on we want to get a famous musician or band in here and we can't use their music, I think that's broken. I think there are ways you could have got around that, like if you're using music old enough that it's all in the public domain or whatever, or if you're just doing like the let's do a fake Beatles, like let's do a knockoff band that Murray can write Beatles-esque songs for, but it's not actually the Beatles or something. But I just don't like I love the Beatles, and I didn't feel like well served by the episode or anything. Like I wasn't expecting them to somehow bust out, an actual Beatles song necessarily at the end. I know people were throwing around Twist and Shout, which is a lovely idea because it's a cover from the first 1963 album, so that kind of makes sense. But I'm sure, like, if they could have done it, they probably would have done it. I'm sure there were issues. Obviously the idea would be they're not playing the Beatles cover from the album, but they're like doing a new cover Murray Gold version. I'm sure there were issues anyway. I'm sure they did that song for a reason. That's not a Beatles song at the end. But the premise just feels broken for me, basically.
Yeah, the husk of the Beatles episode that wasn't drags down the actual idea that evolved out of that, which is the stealing music idea.
Yeah.
And the stealing music idea has its own interesting qualities.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the kind of half-assed Beatles stuff, and it is half-assed, kind of just drags it down. And that whole bit, like in the first half of the episode, when they're talking to like Lennon and McCartney and trying to work out what's gone wrong, and it just something about that all feels a bit flat to me. I mean, it gets picked up once the Doctor drops the spoon and we go into like slow-mo reflections and stuff, but that's so much more interesting than the dialogue we're getting beforehand, which is so good they had to play it again later when they return to the piano in that flashback thing that we already complained about with Babies. So again, doing that again. So that whole thing, it just, it contributes to something else I feel about the episode, which is that it kind of takes place in a flat cartoon world. So like the Beatles here are kind of cardboard Beatles. They don't have much to say for themselves. They don't, like their characters don't really play into it very much. They're interchangeable as Beatles. And I think as well, all the other kind of humans who appear in the episode are just there to be kind of like cartoon drawings, like sketches. There isn't really there isn't a character like Jocelyn from Space Babies in this episode who like matters to it. I mean, it's just the Doctor, Ruby and Maestro. That's it. And it's just them having this like cartoon battle of like throwing musical notes at each other. And I think there are like problems with that. There are maybe some positives to the idea of doing an episode that's so cartoony and so like larger than life. But like it's what it kind of makes me feel is that it's a little bit like we've entered the Toymaker's playroom a little bit.
Yeah.
When you're just playing about in this world where everything's kind of flat, there is something that becomes impersonal about it. When you get self-conscious about writing kind of cartoonish nonsense, it starts to become an exercise in game playing. So, hey, we've shoved thing A into thing B. We've broken this taboo. We've done this thing that you haven't done in Doctor Who before. When you get so self-conscious about doing that stuff, and you leave the lead actors to carry all the stakes of that game and kind of add stakes to it with their performances, rather than create a world around them that's populated with events and characters and ideas and stuff, you kind of get this it's like the inverse of Chibnall's whole, here's a massive gang of characters following the Doctor around in the TARDIS. It's the inversion of that, where it becomes quite lonely instead. You just get the Doctor, Ruby, and the masses, who are just kind of like cardboard cutouts of themselves. So it's weird. I think that will change hugely, like next week and the week after. I think that will change hugely. But for this episode, it's kind of just, it's a bit annoying having that there. When it just feels like something bigger and better could be happening. I will say, before we move on, regarding all the Chord stuff that you guys were kind of like bothered about, I think the episode is trying to make emotional sense, but it also doesn't. It doesn't succeed in that aspect either.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Doctor getting the chord wrong, right, at the climax, right, he gives that whole speech about how, I have loved and lost, and this is where music comes from. Music comes from experience and knowing everything, and I can work out, I'll intuit the holy chord just from my experiences, but, he fucks it up anyway, and it's like, well, okay, well, why? That question of like, well, what exactly went wrong there? I think it needed to be clarified more. I think what the meaning of this process is. Like the floating glass notes and the Beatles knowing what they represent, I'm not so concerned about that, because I think they're magic notes, right? They can intuit it by magic, what notes they are. I don't think the lack of a stave usually matters. But I think that the issue is that, if the ideas that Lennon and McCartney have kind of, through their love of music, whatever, their humanness, they will like work out the perfect chords to play. It's kind of like, well, what makes them so different from the Doctor exactly? What is wrong with the Doctor? That could have been explored a bit more, and it isn't.
Yeah, you're right. It's like, if it's not properly logical, then it needs to be emotionally logical, and if it's not either, then it just sort of flounders. It's like, the Rings of Akaten doesn't make logical sense, but it makes emotional sense how, like, why the Doctor's story doesn't work, but Clara's leaf works. and that's communicated to the audience so that when it happens, unless you're a person who's like, oh, I hate Clara, and like, why is the leaf, blah, blah, blah. But like, generally, to like most of the audience, it was like, yes, that's a kind of logic. That's a logical sense of events, but things are so vague with the solution here that it just feels kind of random. Like, oh, the Doctor just randomly hit a wrong note. And the Beatles randomly hit the right note. I'm saying the Beatles because I can't remember which two it is. That's how little I know about the Beatles and how much I wasn't paying attention.
And that's an issue, isn't it? Like, if this episode had actually done them justice, you would know, would you? Because you'd remember, because they'd be memorable characters.
I want to speak to that. There's something Missy and many, many other people are doing, and I'm just quietly seething every time it happens, which is when people are saying the shitty dog song sounds like a regular Beatles song to me. Just know that I'm seething every time you say that.
I don't think I've ever heard a Beatles song.
they're not that shit. Their first album's really, really good. I really love the first album, so it's great. Don't listen to the first two lines of the first two songs. They've aged extremely badly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think people are collapsing the occasional kind of light-hearted lyrics that maybe they do in their songs and turning that into ha-ha dog song. It's just like real Beatles. And it's like, no, the songs did sound good, even if they were like silly or quirky. Yeah. It's
a fantastic album. Please please me. It's really good. That's why Ruby wanted to see it.
Mine is coming purely out of ignorance.
Missy, just to follow up on that thing that you were just saying about like the emotional sense and stuff, I think it even applies to the music battle as well. Because like when they're playing, when Maestro's on the strings and Dr. and Ruby on the piano, what's happening? Like, what are the stakes of this battle? There's nothing, right? They're just putting some CGI notes to float out and do absolutely nothing. If they were like, if there was any attempt to like make an emotional sense of that, like, what are the stakes of this? Like, is the Doctor gonna die if like Maestro's music like doesn't get like they could have had CGI notes like battling each other in midair, like the notes like hitting each other. Anything like that would have made it so much better. But they don't do that, so there's no like stakes to it.
I don't dislike the battle. I think it's fun. I just think it's like the intro thing. It just could have been cooler, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it's cool, but if you think about it for a second, it falls apart. It's like, the Doctor could have been like playing and he'd hit a right chord and we'd have a glass note float up, and then Maestro would have to like hit the minor chord and break that glass note.
I liked the alien tone stuff. I thought that actually worked in the episode quite well, and it made sense.
Yeah, that is cool. I think it's another aspect of why Maestro works and feels like a real villain. There's a deeper level to their motivations almost. Like, it's not just, haha, I'm going to eat music. There's like this next level where it's like the actual interesting idea, which is that there is music without people, that the sounds of an empty universe could be considered a form of music. And also, because music is so fundamental to the way this universe works, if you stole the music of the universe, it would like break the universe, and you just leave this like all life extinguished across reality, just an empty silence and a kind of a mournful tune created from these universal chimes. That's such an evocative idea. That's so huge. And even though it is just, evil baddie wants to destroy the world, and it's just megalomaniacal stuff that we've seen in Doctor Who before, there is a poetry to it. There is a poetry to those ideas and viewing the universe like music, and it's so much fun.
An emotional logic to it.
Yes, exactly.
All that world building with Maestro is interesting. So, Toymaker, child of the Toymaker. It was such a cool moment when we heard the giggle. I thought that was actually really cool.
I loved that.
So my legions are coming, tricks with the gods, all that sort of thing. Lord Temporal, trap my father and bound him in salt. I love that. That's so cool. Whatever you think of Yonder, I think that's a really cool way to build off it. But there's a thing, we can talk more about Maestro in a second. I just feel like we didn't talk about this with Space Babies, and I feel like it's worth talking about. I don't think you guys I don't think this is an issue to you guys like it's an issue to me, so I might sound insane and maybe cruel with what I'm about to say. In Space Babies, 15 ran away from the monster and he was very scared, and he screamed, he ran, and then we got the technobabble, because it screamed at a certain pitch, that's why I ran away. I'm not a coward, it was really scary noise. Yeah, okay, sure. And then the very next episode, he also runs away and gets really scared, and then he starts stuttering and stammering to his companion about the toy maker, he said, and he's very scared. and he's running away, and then he's hiding in the basement. He has perfectly good reasons to hide. Like, he doesn't know who this is. I get all that. Maybe it's just a bit of the rhythm of the season, just having these episodes back to back. Maybe I wouldn't have even noticed this otherwise. But it's just kind of odd to have 2 episodes in a row that are ostensibly kind of a premiere, which both have the Doctor get really, really scared and run away and hide.
I would say the intended effect of this second one is blunted by the fact we just had him doing it in the first one. So, like, in this one, Ruby's like, "You never hide," and it's like, "Bro, I know it was 6 months ago for you, girl, but in the first episode we just watched, you were both hiding away in those dingy corridors. That was definitely a real thing. So it doesn't quite work there. I think what RTD is going for, I totally get. With these creatures are so powerful, even the Doctor is scared, right? But for that to work, the Doctor has to be like not scared other times. It's a thing. Like, I don't hate scared Doctor at all. I'm not like really worried about it. I think the Doctor could be a fucking total wuss. I'd be fine with that. I just want him to be interesting. Okay, but the problem is you want variety is the main thing. So more variety would be good.
Yeah, it definitely is because of Space Babies. And it's annoying not to go back to Space Babies because it's not actually relevant at all in there. You could have just cut that out. But, like, it's there and it spoils this.
This interesting thing here, I love the world building of the 60th because I love the 60th. So, defeating the Toymaker ripped me in half, tore my soul in half. I can't survive that again. And then, like, the catch trick I could only do once. And then later, yes, the whole argument, Maestro, why are you even here? Your father was really fair. And then, because Timothy Drake lost Chord, whatever. So building off the bi-gen there was interesting. I like that it's super dramatic how 15 talks about it. Certainly talks about it in a very discreet souls way as well, isn't it? That they're separate beings.
Yeah, I think all talk of there being like a flowchart or like, he's come back in time, like that seems to be dead now, I think, to be honest. You can't really square that with it ripped my soul in half. It is full on mitosis, or however you want to think about it.
Mm-hmm. There's another world building thing that I'm a bit confused by. So when he's talking about Susan to Ruby, he said he doesn't know where she is. The Time Lords were murdered. Genocide rolled across time and space like a great big cellular explosion. Maybe it killed her too. Can we clarify? Are we talking about the Time War, or are we talking about, like, what are we talking about here?
I think we are talking about the Master in Spyfall, off screen in Spyfall. I think this is RTD adding logic to more stuff to that to try and make it bigger or sound more interesting, and just anything to make it less shit than it sounded. Maybe. I think you just mentioned the Time War there, and I think maybe there is a certain ellision going on, like sliding, making this thing feel more like the Time War, because it does sound like the Time War, but also I think when he describes like a cellular explosion rolling across time and space, that's not quite the Time War, because the Time War was an actual war. Like, they died in a war, they died in battle, right? And it was the battle that spread across time and space. This sounds like the Master like pressed a button on a device that spent a time pulse that made every Time Lord explode. And maybe this is leading to something where, hey, Susan isn't a Time Lord because she's the Doctor's granddaughter, so she survived it. Maybe that's the idea there, and that will be revealed. But I don't know. But that's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Could this bit of cannon welding, the Master pushed the big button, be the death particle?
God, maybe. Fuck knows. I don't know. Sure, why not?
There was a big button with death, and it's right there.
Actually, no. I think he didn't get the death particle until after he'd already genocided the Time Lords, though. Isn't that right? Like the Siberium, that was much later, I believe.
Yeah, but it blew up Gallifrey, and they were connected, and this is like none of this is actually mapping onto the Chib era. This is just utterly making shit up. Yeah.
Worth noting. Chib Who is not canon. Only RTD's vague memory of Chib Who is canon. That's what counts here.
And it's what Chibnall did to the Capaldi era anyway, so it's all fair play.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any, like, intent in that it can vaguely sound like it's about the New Who Time War, or it can vaguely sound like it's about the Series 12 Master thing, and that it's kind of both? Do you think am I off base there, that the lines are kind of vague enough that... I think
you could skip from Series 4 to this and it would still make sense. I think that's maybe intentional. Just a little bit. Maybe. Because it's kind of, it annoys me a little bit because it's RTD has been given an excuse to slip back into RTD1 mode regarding like the Time Lords in the past, and it's kind of like I wanted like a completely different territory in terms of stuff. So it feels like, Moffat made that change, and how would RTD handle that? Well, no, because Chib's giving him a fucking get out clause to keep writing it exactly the same way. That's really annoying. But at the end of the day, we're putting more focus on this Pantheon stuff, and that will kind of take over. So maybe it doesn't really matter. Speaking of which, I kind of don't like that it's been named that. I kind of hate that there's a capital P Pantheon and that's what we're calling it now. I kind of wish these things would stay more formless. I hate putting labels and boxes on things, especially when they're meant to be...
So power levels.
Incomprehensible. Yeah, power levels. When they're meant to be incomprehensible and unfathomable... now that we have like a name, like they're the Pantheon, I'm worried that we'll end up going to Pantheon Land and we'll start seeing like the Pantheon's house, like here's the Pantheon planet, here's like the Toymaker's Blooming like childhood home, fucking Pantheon orphanage, and here's a Pantheon citadel, and here's how Pantheons regenerate. I don't want any of that. I don't want it to be the Time Lords all over again in like 20 years. You know, I want things to stay like abstract and unfathomable and Lovecraftian and creepy and whatever.
It's just inherently less cool. It's like if we ever saw the Weeping Angels planet.
Yeah, like Patrick Ness was going to try and do in class. Yeah, exactly. Very bad.
Exactly.
Mentioning Susan, I don't want to... I mean, everyone does this, so I don't really want to do it, but there's a difference between seeing a photo of Susan in the pilot in 2017 and not just saying Susan's name, but actually having like a while of talking about Susan. That's interesting.
As is the, like, maybe she died too. Not she died. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does seem like we're posing something we want to follow up on. Yeah, rather than just like Susan's portrait on a desk. That's a very different kind of thing. I think you wouldn't be amiss to assume that this is maybe going to go somewhere with Susan. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Well, Susan, the essence of Susan is that there's been a very, 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 very long gap between when Susan first left. Well, she was left rather than she left. Was left by the Doctor to now. And speaking of long, strange gaps, the 6-month gap between Space Babies and the Devil's Chord is very strange. In the Doctor Who Unleashed episode, they talk of the Devil's Chord as episode 2, so I don't think it was moved. I don't think it was moved around Series 11 style. Like, I don't think this was actually episode 5 moved earlier. Maybe, but I doubt it, given how it's talked about on the behind the scenes episode. But when they like talk about the dates, and we work out it's been around 6 months, that's weird. Because this really feels like a first sort of adventure in that, let's go see the Beatles. But then also we get, Doctor, you never run away. So I guess it has been time since Space Babies. And we don't have the follow-up on the Sundays and their roof cracking and meeting the Doctor and learning about timey-wimey stuff. I'm just very confused by the decision, basically. I'm not like, no, we short-circuited the character development and now I can never relate to them because we never had. I don't feel like that. It's just an odd decision.
Yeah, it's just sort of like it's kind of like a wishy-washy, non-committal thing. It's like kind of half a second adventure and half not. And it's like, I agree with you that like I'm not like fussed. I just want RTD to pick one. Has it been 6 months or is this their first adventure? Because it's kind of both and it's kind of not working as either. So yeah, it's just irritating.
I kind of see how it came together, because I think RTD wants it to be June in real time so that it can sync up with the transmission, which I kind of, that's its own gimmick. But, and also, I also think that he wants to get as quickly as possible into they are firm friends and established adventurers and whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, of course, what that means is that for Ruby to still feel like she's a bit of a novice, which she kind of does here, like in a very big way, she makes that kind of absurd comment to 15 about how, oh, dude, music still exists in the future. Look, I exist. So it's like she still hasn't learned that basic lesson that time can change, right? Even after all this traveling. So the only conclusion from that is that whatever adventures she has had between Babies and this have been more filler ones like Babies, basically. So at the end of Babies, that's just them locking in for, okay, here's some harmless adventures where you don't really learn anything or change very much, and we'll just that'll be all the NSAs basically in that gap. That's what that space is for. She's just had a fuck ton of NSAs, and only now is the real shit kicking in. I guess because maybe on one hand, maybe RTD felt like Ruby meeting the god, one of the evil Pantheon creatures in like her third adventure it was like, what? Yeah, oh my god, that's ridiculous. Oh, but at the same time, this whole thing is about coincidences, right? And everything connecting. So, that seems like a non-problem to me. I don't know. But the bigger problem, actually, and we were about to touch on this when we talked about Babies, but the bigger problem is what the fuck happened like with Carla and Cherry after the Doctor visited them, because that seems like a big deal, and actually having dedicating some time to what the actual situation is between the Doctor and Ruby and Carla and Cherry, Ruby's family, that feels kind of important. It's very vague at the moment, I mean, Ruby says in this episode when they talk about the 6-month thing, she says it's hard to keep track. So she can't quite keep track of like where like her present home timeline is. It implies she's been going back and forth, I guess. I mean, she must have been if we've moved on a bit, but like in what capacity? Like on what kind of schedule? Like how, when are they going back for how long? Like is she still leading her regular life in between adventures like Clara and Bill kind of did, and Amy and Rory eventually did, or is she just not doing that? It's really unclear. So it's odd to kind of invoke what is the time back home if there is no actual sense of what back home even means.
Maybe their doctor and Ruby spent the last 6 months staying with Cherry and Carla and fixing their roof.
Maybe. That would actually, that would make more sense, yeah.
That would be nice. I think that's connects to what I was saying about how it feels wishy-washy, is that you want that connection. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is. we want you to be clear on it, Russell. It's like, what's happening with Cherry and Carla? How long has it been exactly? Like, what's been going on in the meantime? And that vagueness is unfulfilling for as an audience member for this story.
Maybe when Ruby says you never hide, she meant you never hid from like Carla when she gets mad when we were fixing her roof. Yes, that's what it was.
It's just odd because when Moffat does it, it's okay. Like Moff disinterested in family is fine because he's got other things to do. It's just weird for RTD because it's so uncharacteristic for him to like not get all the juice he can get out of. Oh, Doctor is in conflict with family, or you know it's just it seems like the sort of thing he loves doing, and he wrote these episodes, so it just surprised me.
Yeah, I think you get Ruby's home life established so well in the first episode.
Yeah.
So it's weird how it's treated. Like it's actually inconsistent. That's the thing. Like if he was like Moffat and just disinterested on a general basis, then that would be internally coherent, right? It'd be consistent.
Speaking of confusion between Disney Plus and iPlayer, and I presume the actual BBC transmission. So Disney Plus said Maestro was playing the Saxon theme when they were banging away on the piano. In like the void zone to the Doctor and then the Doctor went back to 63. But the BBC, I watched it on Disney Plus. I know Gig watched it on iPlayer. What did the subtitles say instead of the Saxon theme?
Okay, I've actually got the subtitle file from iPlayer on my machine. So if you give me a few seconds to open it up, I can actually scroll through and find it for you.
Sure.
So my computer's a bit slow as well, so you might have to wait a few seconds.
Because when I was watching on Disney Plus, I thought because I like saw the subtitles before, like I heard Maestro play it. So I thought the Saxon, that's odd.
I mean, it's weird to call it the Saxon theme. Like, what even is that? I mean, that fucked up kind of discordant version of the 4 beats, that is vaguely kind of Saxon-ish. But like, why would you call it? It's never called the Saxon theme. What the fuck is that? It doesn't even mean anything.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yes. Yeah, it says distorted version of Doctor Who theme. Those were the iPlayer subtitles for it. Right? I think the iPlayer ones are broadly the ones I would trust, I guess, because I mean, just like whoever's doing the Disney Plus ones is just like off in some Disney zone and doing their own Disney things. One like subtle difference I thought was fun, I guess, it's just about the different style that the subtitles are written in. But on our iPlayer, during the silence bubble sequence, when the Doctor creates a bubble of silence with the Sonic, and Maestro's doing all that stuff, and it's inaudible. Obviously, you don't want people to think that their TV's broke or whatever. In the iPlayer subtitles, it just says, like, no sound in all capitals. Then, as more things happen, it goes, still no sound. Well, I thought it was quite funny. But in Disney Plus, it's just, like, inaudible in square brackets, like, over and over again. It's like, oh, you're boring. I want fun iPlayer subtitles. So I'm just going to download the subtitle file from iPlayer and then mux it into my file of the... Yeah, anyway, I'm getting to piracy things. But, yeah. Some weird fanish thing going on there with Saxon theme, calling it that. Some RTD1 fan.
I guess it's I mean, it's the same sort of thing. Like, it's the 4 beats, Time Lord, heartbeat or whatever. It's just, jumping to Saxon.
But this is for Disney normies who haven't watched... I mean, RTD1 is not on Disney+.
Yeah, they can't even watch the Saxon. Yeah.
So they will watch this and be like, what the fuck is the Saxon theme? Very, very, like, wrong-headed behaviour. Whichever Disney intern...
Who's Saxon? Yeah.
Did that, like, give him a talking to.
Yeah.
Wasn't there some other Disney Plus confusion with the subtitles when they like in the Giggle wasn't after the By Generation, it wasn't he called like the 10th Doctor?
Something like that, yeah.
Disney Plus subtitles are very strange.
Oh, that sounds right. My favorite subtitle screw up of recent years was for the centenary for the Power of the Doctor. What does the Master say? He doesn't actually say this line, but the sub.
Oh, was it your daughter?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I erased your daughter.
Yeah.
I raised your daughter to 13. Very strange. A line lots of people are enjoying in this episode, and which actually, I guess it's a vague. Well, no, I don't need to wank off Capaldi Who for this. That I thought that was an undiegetic, fun line. The Doctor hearing the score, the Doctor hearing Murray Gold's music is very fun. Because the series is doing so much with, characters looking to the camera and we're getting a little bit more meta with everything. I really, really like that. I know we've had Capaldi look to the camera and, Hellbent, the Doctor plays Murray Gold's Clara theme, but I really like that this show is kind of getting more loose with that. Why not? I think it's really fun.
Yeah, I thought the actual, the way they communicate it to us by cutting from the recording studio to the other room and how it becomes muffled then non-muffled based on which room we're in. And that's kind of the signal that something's not quite right there. And then it breaks out. I thought that was a really fun bit. And then when he actually says I thought that was undiegetic, that's kind of almost more explaining the joke a little bit. So I don't laugh quite as much as that. But I like that whole idea. It reminded me a little bit of, in Sleep No More, when we first noticed that the wrong camera is being used.
Yeah.
I like a little subtle cue like that. It was really fun. I think more like breaking down the logic of that is really fun. And all the fourth wall breaks in this episode are really fun.
We're getting too positive. I have a huge complaint. It's my biggest complaint. The song at the end.
Excellent segue. There's a fourth wall break just before that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he winks.
So there's two things to complain about here. One is the actual song, as in the lyrics and the music. And the other is kind of the premise of the song. I want to talk about the premise first, because that kind of leads off what Missy's saying. So they save the day, yay, music's coming from everywhere. The Doctor says, in all my years, there's always a twist at the end, and he winks at the camera. So I know I'm going to sound insane, and I'm not just nitpicky, I think I'm actually going to sound insane outlining my issues with this, because I've talked to a couple of people about it. Some people get what I'm saying, maybe they're insane too, and some people think I'm being very strange in what I'm saying here. So I don't know how you guys or listeners are going to react. I don't get it. There's always a twist at the end. First of all, no, there's not.
Yeah. That's...
tons of Doctor Who episodes end without a twist. They end with a climax, sure, but that's not a twist. So first of all, I don't agree with that. Second of all, I don't really understand how that comes off what just happened in the episode. It feels very random. When I first heard it, I thought, are they about to do twist and shout? Because why else are you saying twist? The episode's just ended. What was the twist? That the Beatles played the chord? That's not a twist. That's just a thing that happened. So I was confused by that. When we get the actual song, we'll go into the song in a few minutes. But so the twist, they're doing the twist, like the dance, the twist. But you know how Spyfall is a really shitty pun because it's not actually a pun?
Yeah.
Skyfall is a James Bond movie. So Skyfall equals spy. Spy is a name for spies. So spy equals spy. Skyfall equals spy. Spy equals spy. Spyfall isn't really a pun because there's no double meaning. It's the same meaning. It's just spy on spy. So it's not really funny, is it? Because it's just saying spy in two ways. There's always a twist at the end. Yeah, they're doing the dance, the twist. So yeah, that's your first meaning. But what's the other one? What's the actual story twist? And then, I've seen people say it's that Harbinger comes out during the song. Okay.
No.
So the big song at the end is about Harbinger coming out? That's what the song is? Is that...
No, that feels like a Chib level cope to me, the idea that it's about Harbinger.
Yeah. And then the other thing, and which I think is the actual idea, is that there's a twist at the end. There's a twist at the end. And the idea there is there's been an actress called Susan Twist, who knows what's going on there, who's been in Wild Blue Yonder at the cold open with the Mavity timeline changing whatever thing, and then who's been in other episodes. She's been in Space Babies in this one, and little cameo-y roles that feel surely like they're building up to, a bunch of flashbacks of, and she was here and finale arc, because we know she's in the finale as Susan Triad Industries, which was set up in the 60s. But basically, billions of arc things are going to this actress called Susan Twist, who's played a bunch of random roles in different episodes. So coming in the finale, there's a twist, actress Susan Twist, and there's a twist about the character played by Susan Twist has been in all the episodes, so the finale undoubtedly will do stuff with her. At the end is the finale, so the Susan Twist, like, very funny. But that's weeks and weeks away. Like, that's not the catharsis now. That's, in a couple of weeks, there's a twist at the end, but the end isn't now. We're in episode 2 or 3 now, so if Harbinger isn't the twist, I know how insane this must sound to people, but this is why it doesn't work for me at all. If the song isn't about Harbinger, is it about Susan Twist's character in the finale? We're not in the finale. We're in the Devil's Chord. So, like, what? Like, I don't understand. What's the twist? I just don't get the whole premise of the song.
I think it comes. Missy, go first.
I wasn't going to explain it because I don't know.
Okay. Okay. I think basically what you talked about there with it being gesturing ahead several weeks, I think is the basic problem. I think it's the entire problem because, and we'll get into this, I guess, when we go into the issues with the song itself, the whole thing is just obsessed with gesturing elsewhere and I guess trying to do Easter eggs, put in Easter eggs for stuff, and it doesn't work as a song as a result. Like, it's just, I mean, it just seems like this whole thing came from, we're going to make it about this twist business and, make it about foreshadowing twists to come and some bullshit. And that's where the whole song came from. And it's just a terrible place to start from because it's got nothing to do with the episode we've just watched.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do, and it just does not create anything musically. And it just leads RG to write all these godforsaken gibberish lyrics that aren't catchy or memorable at all. And it has the whole dance and style be this twist style that Gold seems really uncertain of because he ends up writing a song that sounds like shit. And it just seems to be the genesis of this whole thing. So it just seems misconceived from step one.
It feels like it's written for a reprise.
Yeah.
In weeks' time. But that's not good.
No.
I was just going to say, I have a separate problem with it that connects to this, is that the song is awkwardly trying to pull double duty and it's not working on either level. One is the one you guys are all talking about, which is that it's talking about a twist, it's talking about something that's weeks away, it's talking about something that, like, only, like, the most nerdy anoraks who are reading the credits and know who Susan Twist is could give a shit about. The other thing is that it's also trying to work as the big celebratory music is back, happy ending, yay, celebration song, which is like, I mean, that's a typical thing in, like, musical stuff. But, like,
yeah, it
can't be a celebration of yay, music is back if you're not talking about the episode. You're talking about something else. The other half of that is that it also can't be a celebration if the song is shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, so, like, it's like, that's why it's not working on my level, which I admit is equally insane. It's like, this is a celebration song that's not celebrating the story that it's in.
There's no catharsis with the Beatles, and then it's like we're borrowing from Tom to pay Paul, like this song is setting up the finale, presumably. So it's not paying off this episode. It's not paying off any. It's just, what the hell is going on here?
It's the musical equivalent of Captain Jack showing up in Fugitive.
Oh my god. Yeah, when Gold talked about composing the song, like, in the behind the scenes, he described about how it had to sound like it was about to fall apart, like this weird nervousness to it, which is like, what? Why? I'm sure there's some weird, RTD motive to it, but it's bad, right? Because it doesn't work with the role it plays in the episode. It doesn't have that cathartic, celebratory feel because of both how it is written and what the lyrics are like and the whole tone of it. And like you said earlier, Missy, about this trying to do double duty, there's this weird tonal disconnect. Like, at one point it goes, "What you intend, I can't defend. I think this song will never end." Like, it's trying to get dark. Like, will be some weird, sort of weird, sort of quirky, sort of darkness thing in there, which doesn't quite work either, because it just, none of it fits together. It's just, you could go through line by line and see how it just veers wildly from one bit of nonsense to the next, and there's no through line, there's no musical narrative to it. So it seems to be almost, I'll be honest, the song sounds like it could be one of the deliberately shitty songs from earlier in the episode, both in how it is written, how it sounds, how it plays out.
Yeah,
I've seen some people say the twist at the end is that there's a song and dance number at the end of a musical episode, but that's not a twist. That's the opposite of a twist.
That doesn't make sense.
No, that's the opposite of a twist, I think. That's, yeah.
The twist is that the end song is bad.
The lyrics that Gig mentioned, I've seen some people are saying they think the lyrics are talking about other episodes in the series. Like, there's a line that goes, "Pretend, descend, land's end, make, do, and mend. Land's End, 73 yards, like cliffs and stuff. The waltz and the schmaltz maybe is about the Rogue Regency episode. I don't know if the lyrics are about other episodes or not, but I think the crux there is that if they are, well, that's like you're using a song to...
Yeah, who gives a shit?
And if they're not, then why are your lyrics so weird and bad in the first place? There's like no good way to resolve that. Either they're just weird nonsense lyrics, or they're just setting stuff up rather than being good now. My friend, depend, press send, let's bend.
God, that's awful. It's just terrible.
No penalties for faults. It's...
I think penalties could be like 73 yards. I think someone mentioned that 73 yards is like the length of like a pitch for like some sport. So maybe something to do with that, like penalties. I don't know. Yeah, that's a reach. But yeah, again, the whole premise of trying to put Easter eggs in the song, it's just you are over determining this. You are not focusing on what actually matters here.
The music, I feel so comfortable criticizing Murray because don't we have like 4 hours of pure idolization of him?
Yeah.
On this channel somewhere, like we clearly,
yeah,
huge credit to all his genius. But this sucks. This is not good.
It's a really bad song.
It's a fucking insane moment for Gold to have a massive L. Like, this celebrated composer has done so much great work. Finally, we do an episode with a giant musical number, and it sounds like this. Like, something has gone wrong here. Several things must have gone wrong. I think, given the conditions must not have been wrong, the brief must have been wrong, just everything about it, just wrong, fucking wrong. All, like, the worst elements came together to have Murray Gold compose a song that you just forget the moment it finishes. It just goes in one ear and out the other.
It's very static. Like, it doesn't really go. Like, there's the key changes and stuff, but it's not really telling a story. It's not really taking you on a journey. And it doesn't even really feel that 63 to me. It feels late 60s, if anything, and it feels like an annoying, like, revisionist version of that. It certainly doesn't sound like the Beatles. It's just, I don't know what it defeats me.
Yeah, like, it fails on, like, every level. It doesn't sound like the Beatles. It doesn't sound like the Time Placement. It doesn't sound good at all. It doesn't sound like anything. The thing about these two episodes that are opening after this big long gap, Space Babies and
Devil's Called, yeah.
They both feel really, really slapdash.
Yeah.
And, like, in a way that should not be the case. There's so much lead in time. They worked this, like, these were finished like how long ago, but like everything feels so slapdash.
Maybe there's also something to do with the type of music it is, because even with like Abigail's Song or like Love Don't Roam or those classic songs, those individual numbers that Gold wrote before, those all are about like an emotion, aren't they? They all have like an emotional story to them, some sort of narrative. Whereas this one is like, okay, we just need something to have people dance to, and it's like, well, and you get this panicked result. Maybe it's just a different kind of territory. Maybe it needed a different approach, different process to get something really good out of that. Because it's a different brief to kind of approach from those past songs. It's a different kind of thing. But like, it's... You know, when you mentioned things being slapdash, Missy, I mean, you remember, like, when Moff started his era, like, they didn't film 11th Hour first, right? They let Matt bed in, because there was so much emphasis on this has to work, this first episode. We're coming out of the gate, this has to be the biggest, like, most perfect thing. And it virtually is. 11th Hour is fucking amazing, right? So it's just really annoying to not have that, like, repeated in that level of care. But maybe they felt they could coast a bit, because you had fucking Tennant and everything last year. I don't know, maybe. But this musical number is particularly disappointing because, in theory, I love the idea of it.
Yeah.
Just having a musical number at the end of an episode for no reason, no explanation, no apology, no attempt to justify it. Like, oh, Maestro made us all sing and dance. Or, no, none of that. that's you know, and just let's just have like things happening for no reason. Let's have it rain indoors just for stylistic purposes. All of that, in theory, I love. And if you mute the audio, I think it is really lovely visuals. Great.
Yeah. Looks great.
It'd be fun choreography, great scenes. You know, all of that should have been amazing. In the trailers, it looked amazing. I was so ready. I think lots of people were so ready for these dance sequences to be just fucking brilliant. And they just, meh. It's just a huge disappointment there.
I think there's something slightly worse in what comes right after, because the dance is so well choreographed and it's so fun, and there's so many cool shots. I love the sun behind them and, like, you know, the shots to the feet, and then there's a great, like, silhouette shot of Shooty and Millie. It's just, there's so many cool visuals across this whole sequence. And then they step outside and the weirdest thing happens where their feet are, like, not connecting with the piano Abbey Road crossing, like, well at all, and they're completely out of sync and out of time with the music, and they're barely dancing on the keys at all. It's really sloppy. I don't know what was going on there. It's not good.
I feel like you'd cut out like the music and the glowing pianos and just had them goofily, silly, having fun dancing.
Yeah.
That would have been just a lovely ending. Like, they left the big choreograph thing and they're still carrying that energy just back into the TARDIS. It would have been lovely. And it would have been a nice mirror of when they arrived and they danced along the Abbey Road crossing. But yeah, the execution of this was so terrible that it overshadows any possible good reading of it. Really annoying.
In theory, the light up zebra crossing, in theory, I love that.
Oh, yeah, same, yeah.
The idea of it being more cartoony logic and stuff. And it should work. It ought to work. It ought to be great. But I think it just sounds so hesitant and shaky and weird. And then the final bit when they go back in the TARDIS and this really long pause, and then the TARDIS doors go like a little bit, and there's like brr, and it's the most anticlimactic ending you could possibly imagine. How do you have this whole episode about the wonder of music and the power and joy and emotional catharsis of music, and you just end in this way that feels sheepish, like almost embarrassed of itself? What is happening? It's really, really frustrating. And it's like it's this episode's equivalent of the baby's lips from Space Babies.
Yeah.
It's the cringe thing of this episode. Like, oh god, I can't let people see this. That's so embarrassing. Let's just move to next week, please. Get the trailer for Boom going now, please. Fast forward.
I did one musical thing I did like, the invocation of Carol of the Bells.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
I think that's cool. All the Christmas arc stuff is pretty good, actually. And I like the weird Ruby song before Carol of the Bells. That sounded interesting as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a completely separate thing, and there's no real like explanation given for that. I wonder if will that come back, because that sounds like a separate thing, a separate song, like its own thing, portending something else. I'd like to hear that one again. I'm curious about that, and I think Carol of the Bells itself has such like a majesty to it whenever we hear it, so it really like heightens the tone of that whole bit. It kind of covers for the fact that that sequence ends quite anticlimactically, because Maestro is just like, okay, enough, and just lets her go, so we can move to the next like unconnected bit of nonsense, or I think subplot, as RTD described it. But just that moment of having something really strange happen there, and like the snow bursting back in, I do like those moments, and I like them more than shit like the one who waits is almost here, which is like the crap version of the same thing.
Yeah. It was actually quite cool to also have Maestro react so strongly to that.
Yeah,
it really it helped deliver the importance of that, which is already there. I also really like that scene.
What was not even the ancient one? Something for the Carol of the Bells thing.
The oldest one.
The
oldest one. That's also like annoying, like lame Pantheon house thing. It's like, oh, there's like they have an older brother. Like, okay,
yeah. Yes. You got the oldest one, the one who waits. Are they the same one? I mean, who knows? But yeah, it feels like they're stacking up too quickly. You know, they all know each other's names. They're all best mates. Like fucking hell.
It's like an Addams Family type thing now. It's like less and less cool by the day.
Yeah, you got the toy maker and his child, the child of the toy maker, and they're all women related. Yeah, go on. I get the idea with like child of the toy maker, and the toy maker did kind of create entities and stuff, but it does feel like more of that, like making things smaller and all connected instead of having them be like huge and like so the universe so vast that these things could be so huge and not even actually get in touch with each other that much.
I feel like everything's building, for better or worse, to Journey's End 2.0, where Neil Patrick Harris and David Tennant and everyone are going to return, and it's going to be the post Avengers of RTD2. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I think Jinx returning would be great, because then maybe you could have Jinx actually sing a song.
Please, yeah.
Instead of like that really clipped little ditty she has, like "Daddy was my Daddy was very," however that went, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But like it's weird. I think there's clearly an opportunity. I think if you bring Maestro back, like have them sing a fucking song, please. We were denied that.
Maestro with Neil Patrick Harris would be pretty fun.
Oh yeah, duets. Yeah, that could work too. Yeah, very good.
I loved how their final costume was like a riff on the Toy Maker's the Spice Up Your Life outfit. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I liked how connected to the Toy Maker Maestro was they had the same sort of like every time they'd show up, it would be in a new outfit.
Yeah.
And when they go into the Black Void, it was very similar to the puppet show, but
Yeah.
there's lots of similarities there. I hope they don't do that with everyone, but I liked it with Maestro because Maestro's cool.
Yeah, I particularly in that Black Void sequence, I loved Maestro's dress, and when the purple dress, when Maestro is climbing on the piano, and the way the dress kind of flops over, it's like it's like some sort of sea creature like shambling along the ocean floor. That was a very arresting visual, kind of like shimmying along, with like purple fluffy kind of folds everywhere.
I also liked when we're in destroyed, ruined London, and like the camera pans down to this glittering high heel.
Yeah,
like we've not seen Maestro wear a high heel, but we already know that that's Maestro. It's really cool.
Yes.
I like this one tons more than Space Babies, and I loved some aspects of it tons, but I really hated how it ended, and I thought there were a bunch of weird misses.
I would say, regarding like the tone and general style of this, if there was like a 60s episode where the Doctor played 5 notes on the piano and musical notes appeared hovering above his head on the screen, I would consider it the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life, because I just find that whole early that willingness to experiment and be a bit more free with the possibilities of television, this early form, back in like early Hartnell, doing shit like Planet of Giants, Edge of Destruction, Web Planet, just going from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. And even later on with like Troughton, Mind Robber, right? Jamie and Zoe getting closed inside a giant book like a trap and it shuts on them. Just that sheer, like, just that freeness and fun with imagery. It's just so delightful. And I love the idea of having that back in Doctor Who. So when like the Doctor and Ruby get sucked into the musical instruments, right, and they become prisons, and the Doctor is in the drum, his face is like kind of bulging out from underneath the skin of the drum, or Ruby's inside the double bass, and we see a shot of her point of view, like seeing Maestro dancing through that little S-shaped gap in like the instrument, and just playing with visuals that much is so delightful. That sense of fun is what makes the black and white era so thrilling at times. And I've always wanted that kind of back, that willingness to kind of go crazy with it. And that is a really delightful thing to have back. And it reminds me of the 60s a little bit in that way.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes me a lot more sympathetic to, I guess, what's going on here and the whole freeness of reality bending and all of that. I mean, it doesn't like make up for kind of the foibles, but it's kind of why I feel quite warm about like those choices being made, and why I think like some viewers aren't going to like the cartooniness of it, which is completely understandable. But like I said before, cartoons exist for a reason. Like, they are fun, and being able to show off just how much you can distort and change things into the uncanny and fuck around with like just what you can do on the screen and with the camera is just fundamentally delightful. And I'm always going to take delight in that stuff, even if the episode is a bit like shit in other ways.
Yeah, I agree.
Timelines. I laughed at that bit actually when he's explaining why he can't go and visit Susan.
Yeah.
Just the sheer, I think the dismissiveness which he can play that now, like timelines, whoosh, whatever, makes me laugh.
That's the kind of exposition we need to be written for 15.
Yeah, because he plays that perfectly. Yep. Whereas like the Pandorica Rani Mavic Chen, he does not quite.
One bit of music we didn't really talk about heaps so far is Maestro's music, which does play a fair bit in the episode. Let's listen to the first little rendition we get of it from the cold open.
I love whenever Gold busts out that guitar.
Yeah.
It's just something there's such a brash charm to it, like all the way back to like series 1.
Yeah. I like that. I think the, even more than the melody, like you're saying, the guitar, like the instrumentation and the texture, if Maestro comes back in a later episode, I feel like it's one of the things where, like, when they like play the Sidemen theme before the Sidemen come out and like your brain goes, oh, the Sidemen are coming. I feel like this is a theme you could really do that for. Like you could hear 15 seconds of that before Maestro bursts out a piano or something, and your brain would like go, yay, Maestro's coming. You'd actually recognize what's going on, which is really cool. Yeah,
it's perfectly keyed into the fact that we enjoy like this villainous presence on screen.
Yeah.
Like it's a fun sort of villainy. It's not actually trying to scare you that much. I mean, I guess the kind of squealing strings towards the end there are kind of enhancing the kind of dread factor there. But the actual song itself is just fully engaged with just like the camp theatrical villainy of it all.
This is another rendition of it I really like from about 20 minutes in when Maestro interrupts Ruby's waltz and bursts out the piano.
I love that.
Yeah, I just listening to that put a smile on my face. I love that kind of fusion of the different instruments and just the swagger of it all.
Yeah, just Maestro is like a success on absolutely every level. So there's lots about the episode I don't love, but it's nice when a villain is just everyone, like the writing, the acting, the music, everything just completely coheres together. That's so cool when that happens. No one let anyone down there. Speaking of, to go the opposite route on that point, Russell comments about the episode in the April 2024 Doctor Who mag so the magazine says, the first note of the Devil's Chord, the first note of the Devil's Chord, the spark of this story idea, was played in 2021 when it was announced that Russell T Davies was returning as Doctor Who showrunner. A director friend in his early 20s, Sam Arbour, told him, if I had a TARDIS, the first thing I'd do is go and see the Beatles recording their very first album. What did Russell say back? If I'd had that idea, I might have thought, well, that's what you think at 60. But Sam must have been about 22 at the time. I thought, oh, the Beatles, that's interesting. The idea for this episode hit me in that moment. At the same time, I immediately knew that it's almost impossible to use any Beatles music on TV. It's so expensive that you can't use a single note. Believe me, we tried. But then that created the story. Literally, there's a story in motion. The Beatles, you can't use the Beatles music. The point of that is just confirmation. So they did try to get Beatles music.
And that would have presumably led to a completely differently shaped story. I mean, maybe even a different premise for what Maestro's doing. I mean, I don't know.
Even if, this is stupid what I'm about to say. I'm extrapolating out way too much. But when he says, like, you can't use a single note, I wonder if they even had a conversation like, can we use, like, 2 seconds from A Day in the Life? Can we like, sample the chord at the end there for the John and Paul bit at the end? But, yeah.
Yeah, that might be it.
It's classic Russell and Moff thing of, making the best of your situation. So, of course, Russell says all this stuff about all the episodes about you can't use the Beatles music. That's the whole idea. But he's also saying right there, but we did want the music and we did try to use the music. But also we didn't need the music. It's very good what he's doing there, but you kind of see the game. Other stuff he kind of said on the Beatles topic of this is it's unashamedly part of that tradition, my new tradition of having gods at war on screen. Stephen Moffat loves episodes like these. He says there's a different energy to them. You introduce a godlike element into Doctor Who, and you get a kind of tumbling, free-falling anarchy. It's wild and raw. Other things he says are, this episode isn't a celebrity historical in the traditional sense. The Beatles are part of it, but it's much madder than that. It makes up its rules right in front of you. You know you'll reach the old audience with a monster and a dark shadow and a claw coming around a corner, but this episode is something new. Though still full of thrills and vileness and cruelty and joy. We're in a very busy science fiction fantasy world now. We've always got to do what other shows don't. It's Doctor Who's unique territory. In an age where Doctor Who is going on to Disney+, it's important to say that it's the same show, it's new Doctor Who, with a twist. It's time to shake off the dust. It's time to rattle the rafters. Like Space Babies, this episode says, look, we haven't sobered up. We're still in the middle of the party, still dancing.
I mean, that whole little riff he went on at the end there is like self-consciousness to a T. Like just massively insisting, this is what we are, this is us, please believe us. And almost more so. I mean, again, he's just describing it in retrospect, so this isn't like a huge insight, but it's just... I would question to what extent this is truly that idea of having a villain who can bend reality and whatnot. How unique is that, really? I mean, okay, like it's not like standard, like it's not like Rings of Power or like I don't know whatever. But it's. I do feel like it's not necessarily some Doctor Who unique thing. Maybe the self-consciousness with which they kind of launch into stuff like the music battle and doing that like in a live action drama that's putatively about traveling through space and time. Maybe that has like a weird specific oddness to it. I mean, that might be valid, but so I'm not entirely convinced that you couldn't see. Yeah, I'm not really sure where to land on that.
No, you're right. No, I get that's interesting. I guess I think what you're kind of implying there is like this is different from different Doctor Who, but that's kind of the opposite of what he's trying to say, which is this is different from other things. It's like to codify, hey, we're not going to explain the science. That only really matters in Doctor Who context, but that doesn't really... Like, yes, Marvel stuff, Thor it's actually alien science or whatever, yeah, but that's only Marvel. There's things that don't do that. Like, Stranger Things, I don't think really, kind of, but a lot of it's just I've only seen season 1, but a lot of it just seems kind of hand-wavy, X-Filesy, science, I guess, but also it's kind of supernatural. Like you said, Rings of Power, there's lots of just outright fantasy shows right now. I don't know.
I think you mentioned Marvel, but like even in Marvel, like with the second Doctor Strange and stuff, you've got them veering more into like magic and witchcraft.
That's true.
And like Doctor Strange summoning symbols in midair that do stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that far apart from like Maestro and the staves flying around in CGI. I feel like it's not like a completely different language there.
Russell isn't injecting like fairy tales back into Britain, I guess they're already around.
Yeah, it's a very, like, Doctor Who brained, which isn't, inherently a bad thing. We're all a bit Doctor Who brained sometimes, but it's a Doctor Who brained way of approaching this sort of, like, how do we make something that's new and fresh and never been done before, but, like, really confining that idea to Doctor Who. It also just feels like the sort of typical RTD, like, blustery, talking up his own stuff, which he does all the time, and that's just par for the course for him. And like, this is the greatest thing ever. No one's ever done anything like this before.
Yeah. Another just interesting little clarification in the magazine was Russell saying, on the topic of whether like Maestro is written around Jinx Monsoon or not, Russell says, the part came first, but having written it, it was then kind of obvious that it was Jinx. But so it's not, it wasn't written to her, but it did click very well, is what he's saying.
And maybe like, because obviously RTD has mentioned that he knows Jinx like in real life for various reasons. I think maybe that's a certain extent to which something can inform your writing without you consciously trying to let it inform it. Almost like, so I think those two things can kind of be sort of in tandem, like playing opposite each other without one necessarily being like a... Basically, RTD kind of sort of maybe unconsciously written a Jinx-like character without deliberately trying to write it for Jinx. So, if that distinction means anything at all.
There's two last points on the episode. There's the second point we went through a bit, but I don't feel like we fully unpacked the depravity in full. The first bit we haven't talked about at all. How to open this. There's a term I don't particularly like that I don't hate it. Like, I don't think it's utterly evil or anything. And I've used it myself now and again, but I just think it's kind of an eye roll inducing term that floats around the nethersphere of the internet and sometimes very awkwardly in real life as well, which is media literacy. You've probably all heard this, before, like, these guys lack media literacy. They don't understand the episode. They don't have the same. Well, sometimes they genuinely do lack media literacy. It's like people are using words wrong. They're using cinematography, and they don't mean they're meaning something totally different. There's sometimes people they don't understand what a leitmotif is. This is fine, but they do actually lack some of the terminology and understanding of things. So sometimes it actually is legit what's going on. But often it's just kind of used in a way like you have different opinion. You don't know how stories work, right? Okay. So I've set up it's a really, really condescending term that's not great to use, so I can use it. I think, to be more specific than media illiteracy, I think there's not everyone's a musician, or not everyone is super... You don't have to be a musician to understand music in certain ways. Not everyone is super keyed in to a lot of musical workings. So there's nothing wrong with this, but I think there's a tiny little bit of musical illiteracy that floats around. Because of course it does. Not everyone's experts in different things. But Doctor Who's playing with music very ostentatiously lately, and so little bits of musical illiteracy have been popping up, and especially with like when on Twitter and TikTok or wherever, where you can really easily make short clips and you make very selective clips, it's very easy to mislead people into thinking certain things, right? You have the little text which gives like a leading premise, and then you have a very selective clip, and then you can get like, it's not truly a huge amount of people. It's like scores, more than hundreds, but scores of people thinking and saying certain things, and this just makes little Neo a little irritated. So there's a few examples I just want to talk through. The first one, we're not going to split hairs of subjectivity, objectivity. There's no actual argument here. The chord that fake John and fake Paul play isn't the chord from A Day in the Life. It's not kind of like the chord. It's not sort of the chord. It's not close enough to the chord. It's not the chord. This isn't a discussion. It's not the chord. So I don't understand people arguing it is.
But there's reverb, so it must be the same because it has the same vibe.
But it has to be because this is like the meaningful, like epic Beatles finale. That chord has to mean something.
It's just I don't. This isn't really an interesting one to unpack just because there's no actual discussion to be had. No, you're just wrong. It's not the chord.
I think it shows that people want it to be that. Yeah. So they're willing to just kind of tell themselves it is and just forget what it is. Yeah.
It would be cool if it was, but it's not. The second one is this one I actually understand a little bit more because I see the thinking with this one. It's just not quite right. So we all know the giggle, da 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 da, the major arpeggio. And we've all heard this a million times in our lives before anyway, because it's, the warm-up that singers do all the time is, that sort of thing, major arpeggios. And the song that I hate in the episode at the end, some people going, oh my God, it's the giggle melody. It's the da-da-da-da-da-da, because they say there's always a twist at the end. And that's the same thing. It's not, but it's close. So like, I get what you're saying. It does start and then it goes up and then it comes back down, but it's not the same. But I get that it's close. The thing is, I've seen people trying to read heaps into this, and I'm not even totally 1,000% saying there's no chance that there's anything here. But also, like, that's a really common thing to do in music, is to do that kind of, it's a little you up and then we go down, and then it's a bit like that. Like, that's like, I get that it sounds similar, and I'm not totally discounting that, but it's also loads of things sound like that. Have you heard what I'm talking about, where people are like going, it's always a twist at the end? It's like, it's the giggle, it's the toy makers.
I can hear it, like, now you're explaining it, like, I can kind of hear it, like, what you're talking about. I can see, and also hear that it's slightly different, so it's not accurate, but the similarity is kind of superficially there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one doesn't annoy me, but it's just, I don't think it's fully there.
To me, I've seen people discussing it online, and the argument for it, it's weird to me, because it's like, we know what Murray Gold is like, If he wanted a twist at the end to have the giggle thing, it would be blaring in all of our faces. It wouldn't be like kind of a tiny bit, maybe sort of like it. That's not his style. So that, like, the fact that it kind of like broadly sounds similar is like meaningless.
Yeah. The last little musical thing I wanted to talk about is this one does annoy me. So you remember the Sarah Jane Adventures?
Yeah.
There was a villain originating in a Gareth Roberts episode called the Trickster, who was in this very kind of current RTD mode of like gods and, it's a bit spooky and it's not quite sciencey. They're like gods. And the Trickster was like bargains, and from what I remember, and like he was a pretty good villain for the Sarah Jane Adventures, originating in a Gareth Roberts episode. And when characters originate from writers, it's like that. There's a connection there. So he didn't originate in a Russell T Davies credited episode. So if were the Trickster to be brought back, my presumption would be Gareth Roberts would get at least credited, and I assume probably more than just that. I don't fully know, because it's totally possible there's more to this than I understand, but that's how things tend to work in Doctor Who anyway, which is one of the main reasons I'm very skeptical of this idea of the Trickster coming back. I'm also very skeptical because, like, really?
I think the Trickster would kind of be a step down at this point, is the problem. Like a step backwards.
Yeah.
It's like how Clara says never start with your final sanction, you've got nowhere to go, but backwards. I think, like, the Trickster is so, it just feels small time compared to these extra universal, like, gods that have been, like, that were barred from the universe prior to Wild Blue Yonder, but are now in. Whereas, the Trickster was messing around in the universe, like, years and years ago, so, yeah.
I'm not doing any, like, code of the Trickster was a crap villain. I like the Trickster heaps. I think it was maybe the best villain that show ever had. Like, I have no, like, what a stupid, creation. I have none of that for the Trickster, but that's a villain from literally a children's show, like 15 years ago. It's not on Disney Plus or anything, and it's not even from a Russell T Davies episode. I don't see the idea here. I don't see the game here. I don't quite get the thinking. Like, why? Even if it was a really super awesome villain that really eclipsed the Toymaker's performance and everything, just the mechanics, I don't understand I just don't get it. So what someone recently did was they very deceptively and selectively clipped a bit of music from a Trickster episode. And then, well, you guys heard this. What happened then? You guys have seen what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so the bit from the episode where Ruby, before we hear Carol of the Bells, Maestro kind of twings the like a tuning fork, and Ruby involuntarily produces this song that we haven't quite heard before, which we're not quite sure what that means. And that kind of seems like a prelude to like the hidden song inside Ruby, which is Carol of the Bells. But this other song that Ruby sings first, well, people are asking, well, where did that come from? And so people have clipped that and juxtaposed it with the clips from a different song altogether.
That's also the thing. There's actually it's quite clever what they've done here. Like they're saying, look, it's the Trickster's theme, and here's the thing, that's not the Trickster's theme. They've clipped it from a Trickster like scene, and they've said this is the Trickster's theme. And so, and who of us has recently rewatched the Sarah Jane Adventures? So we're just going to accept that. But that's not the Trickster's theme, which is a different piece of music. That's just a piece of music from the episode. So if you go through any episode of TV and you just wait until you find, a certain, you can find anything by doing this. You know what I mean? It's like, I think Coolsville sucks of, like motifs, basically. Like it's not the piece of music they're saying it is. And then they're lining it up with that thing, and it's just a complete false equivalence. And it just, part of me finds it funny, part of me finds it annoying, because I think it's clever what's being done there, but it's not even what they're saying it is. So it's not implying anything about the Trickster, because that music isn't like the music most associated with the Trickster. And also, I feel like this is a thing some people get. You don't have to be a musician to get this, but in, Western music, there's not that much to play with necessarily. There's a finite amount of notes, and there's a finite amount of ways to put them together in ways like the majority of audiences will find pleasurable. So you're going to get a lot of repeated music. And so if you're going across such a huge canvas as the universe, yeah, you can find stuff that sounds similar. But none of this makes any sense to me. How do you guys feel about it?
To me, it feels like these three things we've discussed are all examples of the same sort of thinking, where it's like these people want these things to be the case more than they are the case. It reminds me of the Thasmin kiss at the end of Power of the Doctor, where Yaz was carrying the Doctor inside, where it's like there's a group of people who really want a certain thing to happen, and even though it might not like actually make sense, there's sort of an argument that they could make. And the thing that gets me about it is that if what they're saying ends up being true, it doesn't actually mean that much relative to the story. Like, if the Giggle arpeggio is in Twist at the End, and Twist at the End kind of sounds vaguely like the Giggle on purpose, like, who cares? It's like, what is the point of making that almost sound kind of like a thing? Or like, what's the point of having Ruby sing this thing that kind of sounds a bit like the Trickster's, a theme from inside a Trickster's episode? It's like, even if what you're arguing does make sense, you're arguing kind of sort of this half-measured thing. So it's just this weird idea to me. Does that make sense? I was rambling.
Yeah. Even if all the premises we're disagreeing with were correct, it's still not that cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gig, do you have any other thoughts on that?
The Trickster stuff is just people want stuff to connect to stuff they recognize, so they can have the linking up feeling and recognizing stuff and knowing stuff before other people do, and having that kind of Docky Who insider knowledge of, hey, I know about the Trickster. Ooh, oh my god, the Trickster's coming back. Yes, it all links together. Brilliant. And that's why they want to believe this stuff. And that's kind of what motivates them to kind of distort reality to the point where it seems believable. Distorting
reality is kind of the note I wanted to end on here. This is going to be really indulgent, so I'm sorry to you guys and anyone listening. I just feel like I need to express this to people. I need to feel heard here. And this is the episode to do it on. I'm really, really, really not liking the arc stuff in this season. And I had kind of a moment the other day where like a come to Jesus moment of going, this is actually annoying me. Like, not in a fun way. This is actually how to put this without sounding completely insane. I like a lot of what I'm watching in these episodes, but there's bits where I actually feel negative, and that's not nice. I mean, it's nice to be so engaged with the show as to feel this way. And I assure you, I'm living my best life, and this isn't a huge deal, but I didn't feel like this in a lot of seasons of the show. And in fact, the last time I remember feeling this way was when I was much younger in the first Russell T Davies era. And so it was just kind of a confronting thing of realizing, hey, I felt the same way as a kid in 2007. and I'm feeling it now. And I remember what I did then to solve it, and I don't want to do that now. Look, I like the snow arc. I like that. I like Ruby, Snow, parentage, mystery. Like, I'm cool with all that. But beware the one who waits. The boss. There's always a twist at the end. Susan twist. Never seen a TARDIS before. I'm not having a good time. I don't like any of that stuff. In fact, it annoys me quite a lot. The thing, I know how insane this sounds, but there's always a twist at the end. And then Susan Twist, the actress who's appearing in all the episodes and some type of arc thing. Then we have, other old woman characters around who are also arc characters in different ways. And we're invoking Susan Foreman. And all this stuff's just kind of being played around. It reminds me of Lost a little bit. We're just like throwing around these J.J. Abrams styles. Let's talk about this water cooler conversation sort of stuff. What the tipping point for me was when the Doctor Who socials did a social media post. There's always a twist at the end. Susan twist? Put so-and-so together. It's just like, this isn't fun to me. This isn't a story to me. This isn't even really television to me. I don't really know what this is, but I really don't like it. There's always a twist at the end, and the song, we unpacked it as much as we could, and I know most people like it, and that's great. But for me, I don't understand what the song means. I don't understand what the twist at the end was. And Susan Twist is all around, and so it's like in 2005, things were very different because I was much younger and the internet was different back then. So the Bad Wolf stuff, I don't even think it was that good then, just to say a random thing, but it was much less in your face. But now it's not just in your face in the episode, it's like everything's nudging and nudging you. The whole media ecosystem around the show is, all the channels and everyone, you need to subscribe to me to learn. There's always a twist at the end, and Susan Twist. And then the official social media is doing the same thing. And I'm like, where is the oxygen to even potentially enjoy this? Like, because isn't the fun of this sort of thing making the connections yourself or with your friends? But even when like the official communication is like going, you get it right. Like, I don't really understand. I don't get what any of this is for, really. I thought this sort of arc stuff was to try and keep people enthused and engaged with the series as it develops. But it's doing like literally the exact opposite to me. And I feel like this is just a purely selfish, indulgent individual response, but it feels like it pushes me away. I really dislike this sort of thing. Just a total individual experience. Maybe some listeners will think I'm crazy, or maybe some will relate. I don't know. What do you two think?
Yeah, a ton of these things are empty containers. So, like, the one who waits is an empty container right now. Mrs. Flood is an empty container. Even Susan Twist, why is she appearing everywhere? An empty container. The boss. All of these things are like empty boxes, right? And there's the circle jerking and the prominence and the constant foregrounding of the fact these boxes are empty and have nothing in them, like nothing. We are expected to be excited about them just because they are empty boxes and we don't know what's in, rather than because there is story coming out of them or connecting to them in any way. So something like Susan Twist in every episode, if that was just let to be by itself, just a random thing, like, wouldn't be so bad, it's fine. It's then you get like the, oh my god, official Doctor Who podcast, there's always a twist. Yeah, no. That's when it escalates, because then we're wanking off the nothingness, right? And it rather than it doing anything or meaning anything in the stories themselves. So it really does become like this impersonal, like, just shuffling things around on the table just for no particular reason, and the self-satisfaction in achieving absolutely nothing. So I think that's why it's frustrating.
That's very similar to my thoughts. I was thinking, like, why is the snow stuff cool, but the rest of it sucks? And I think it's like, because the snow stuff is an actual story, like it connects to Ruby.
Yeah.
It's like there's an emotional core there. That's like, there's a reason like we give a shit about that. But the other stuff is just, what it's like is like this barely related, like tangentially just there ARG that happens to be happening alongside this show, and like we don't have any reason to care about any of it beyond like, oh, it's there and oh, it's a puzzle to be solved. But there's like, we don't know anything about any of, like, they're just random Susan Twisters playing these random like nameless characters who are on screen. There's no emotional connection, there's no story connection. The only reason to care is to like, quote unquote, solve this puzzle. There's no meat to that or to any of it. The same with like the one who waits and everything. Like you said, they're just empty boxes. So it's like, yeah, there's just nothing there.
I feel like there's a thing about investing in this that's like, This sounds so pathetic. I feel like people have different level. Like I feel like there's a finite amount of energy you have to give over yourself to certain types of stories. Like I feel like this is part of how nostalgia works. It's not even that the media you experienced at 14 or whatever is better, and people realize this. But I don't just think it's that, oh, I just happened to experience this when I was 14, so I connected with it more. I think it's like the first few times you go through a certain type of storytelling, you can give yourself over to it, and then you get burnt, and then it's the same thing as, your first love is different from your second love, and your second love can be superior in every single way, and you love them more and everything. But there's a difference in that when you've loved once, the heart is a bit different when it loves twice. There's a scar on it, which, slightly changes the way things work, right? This is so wanky what I'm saying, but I feel like your second Lindelof show is different from your first Lindelof show, right? Or your second J.J. Abrams thing is different from your first J.J. Abrams thing. Because it's like the first time you can give yourself over because you're innocent and naive and you can actually engage with it. And, and then you might get really annoyed at how things do or don't resolve. And so then the next time you might like pause and you might ask other people, is it worth watching this? Is this ended? Is the finale good or whatever? And so, and you go on. And maybe you watch too much TV like us. And so it actually becomes a bigger and bigger thing to try and invest, to give yourself over so much to a show that you're kind of letting it have the chance to hurt and frustrate you. I think like the 2019 Watchmen show, there were so many warning bells around it before it started. It's a Watchmen adaptation. Lindelof's extremely bizarre letter to Alan Moore, weird like cry begging, I know you're not going to let me do this, but can you let me do this, Dad? It was so strange. There are all these things about it saying, and the fact it's Lindelof, there's a million reasons to say, guys, don't invest in this. Don't give this a go. Don't, you're going to get burnt watching this. You're going to get burnt. And we engaged with it anyway, and we gave ourselves over, and we absorbed all the when I say we, I don't mean the communal we. I know lots of our listeners don't even know this show, but lots of us talking now gave ourselves over to it and engaged with all the paratext, and we read everything, and we theorized on forums, and we thought about it all week. We gave ourselves completely over to it, and that was fine until it wasn't. And then when you get burnt at the end, and it's like, I knew I was probably going to get burnt, it really hurts, right? And it becomes much harder to, like, if a Lindelof show started up now and everything about it sounded even better than Watchmen, it sounded like the most amazing thing in the world, I wouldn't. I would wait until it was totally done, and then I'd still be very skeptical, and then I'd need friends to go, no, absolutely, it's actually, it deserves a watch. Because I'm like hurt. The thing is, with RTD, I don't think I've even ever had the experience where I felt like all the ARC stuff was worth it. So I don't think I've even had like the ideal of going, that all really came together in the end. There's RTD finales I've liked, but not because of the Bad Wolf thing is just nothing. Like, that's the nicest thing I can say for it. It doesn't really mean anything. It's very not noticeable in the actual episodes. A lot of the other arcs, basically the best thing I can say about these RTD arc things is the good ones aren't that noticeable, and the bad ones are really annoying. I don't even feel like there's a good scenario here but it could be as good as when so-and-so did it. Am I forgetting? Was there an RTD arc that worked particularly well? I don't mean like a story and characterization arc, because he's good at those, but I mean like one of these, always a twist at the end, the one who waits types, foreshadowing plot things. Has he ever done a good one?
I don't think so.
I mean, I don't think Bad Wolf was terrible. It's not great.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, no, not terrible.
But I think in terms of how that story, the way that story ultimately culminates, is a cool place that it goes to. Like Rose, kind of secretly pushing herself to save the Doctor there. It's not great, but it's not a terrible thing.
I guess if the media landscape and social media stuff had been there in 2005, and the official Doctor Who Twitter account had been tweeting about, Bad Wolf's on the TARDIS graffitied. What could that mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because what it leads to is cool, but it's also completely devoid from anything in the previous 12 episodes.
Yeah. That's I think the boss and the one who waits are genuinely bad. I think those are actually legitimately annoying, because they're nothingness and they're loud nothingness. The Maestro, the one who waits is almost here. That sucks. That sucks. There's nothing good about that to me. The Susan Twist thing, if this somehow happened in 2005, maybe that could have worked. If it wasn't maybe I'm complaining more about the landscape around the show than I am the actual show for that one, at least. I think the one who waits actually is bad. But the Susan Twist thing, yeah.
But then you have It's Always a Twist at the end being in the show, you know, which kind of uncomfortably aligns with the Susan Twist stuff. And that's kind of the problem, isn't it?
Not even just the title, but also like it's a whole song that doesn't even really seem to be about the episode that's saying, hey, big twists are in the works, which is like, we don't like, it's TV that generally happens anyway. Like you don't need to say it's the same thing. It's the only 5 weeks to the heart-stopping finale.
Yeah.
Like Chibnall stuff, which it pulls you out of the show counterintuitively. Yeah.
So what you're saying is we've been burnt by RTD1, which is why we're not falling for his tricks again.
Yeah, that's how I feel. The thing with Moffat is a lot of his stuff didn't work, but every season he changed up what he was doing a lot, and sometimes for the worse. But he never quite played the same. I know this sounds absolutely insane to say Moffat didn't quite play the same bag of tricks. Obviously, he did in many ways, but not with how he did his seasons. You know what I mean? Like he changed how he did that. Is that even true? I feel like that's true. Is that true?
I think it's basically true.
I guess for me, what works with the Moffat stuff is like what I was saying about why the snow works is that it's tied into the story we're telling. That like all of the Moffat like a lore arc shit was like about things actually happening in the story. It wasn't like Susan Twist, which is just completely disconnected. So that's why it works for me when RTD's arc stuff doesn't.
Thing is, I think RTD's arc stuff this time, it's not the same as he did in RTD1. It's actually worse because in series 3 with like the Mr. Saxon stuff, I mean, like the point there is that the UK is kind of subtly in the background being taken over by this mysterious new prime minister, and that is a thing that pertains to the world of the show and ends up having consequences in that world. Yeah. Whereas like the villain shouting, "Oh, the one who waits is coming," just before they get shot in the piano.
It's nothing.
Doesn't it's nothing, right? It's absolutely nothing here. So it's just boasting about the fact that this will be answered later, rather than setting up a real tangible thing to have consequences later.
Oh, you know what it reminds me of?
What?
The Halloween apocalypse.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The stuff with the swarm visions.
And the angel, weeping angel.
All of that, yeah.
Just a trailer for episode 4. Yeah.
Halloween, trick or treat. Trick or treat, doctor.
I would love to go back to, in so many ways, I would like to return back to series 11, where we only had one episode with like an arc thing in the Ghost Monument. And we had nothing else that I remember. Everything else was just kind of its own thing. Rand Score had the villain from the premiere, but everything else was pretty much like they literally moved the episodes around because it was that disconnected. And I'm not being passive aggressive. I actually like that a lot. I would love another season like that one day. Series 12 was more traditional New Who, wasn't it? Like we had some episodes that really pushed the arc, like Spyfall and Captain Jack, Fugitive, then the last ones, and then Flux was just it was. I don't really know how to describe it. It was different than what series 12 and 11 did. I'll give it that in terms of arc stuff. So Chibnall and Moffat changed up how they did a lot of things. Yeah. I guess the upside of that is the next episode, of course, is by Stephen Moffat and very much in Stephen Moffat's wheelhouse. So that's nice. And the episode after that sounds like it's Russell playing to his strengths. So there's always a
twist at the end.
Listeners, let us know what you thought of The Devil's Chord, what we had to say about it, the music, the RTD2 season 1 arc stuff, anything and everything else we talked about. Always love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for listening as always. Cheers.